Welcome to the video lecture series of the course Information Security. So in this course we are going to follow the textbook Principles of Information Security. And in today's video lecture we are going to see the topics to be risk management. So we need to see what is meant by a risk. So here we can first see about the meaning for the risk, and then we shall move into the concepts to be risk management. And in this particular video lecture series we are going to deal with information security. So everything related to the information security we will be seeing in the lecture series. So risk can be said to be a possibility of something which can be dangerous or unpleasant things can happen. That can be said as a risk, and also it can be said as a situation that can be dangerous, or the situation may give a bad result. That we will be saying it as a risk. And it can also be said as a person or a thing that may cause something dangerous. So this happening can also be said as a risk. And so if someone is going to take a chance, and in that chance something unpleasant may happen, okay, so that particular situation can also be said as a risk. And if you are putting yourself, okay, so if you are putting something, or if you are putting yourself into a dangerous position, then that can also be said as a risk. Okay, so this is said to be a risk. Okay, these are the meaning of a risk. So in short, risk means something unpleasantly happening to, or if we are exposing ourselves to something which is unpleasant happening. Okay, so that is said to be a risk. Okay, now we can come to the concept set of the risk management. Okay, so here we are dealing with the concept, or we are dealing with the information security, right? So with respect to the security, or with respect to an organization, we are going to see what is meant by a risk management. Okay, so a risk management means identifying possible dangers to an organization's information on the system. Okay, so what are the asset it has, or what are the devices it is using for transferring or for creating the informations. Okay, so for that, if anything dangerous is going to happen, okay, and then for finding that ways, okay, so what are the ways, or through which ways the dangerous things are coming to happen, or coming to attack the assets of an information, and reducing or controlling that. Okay, reducing that particular risk or controlling that particular risk, that is said to be risk management. Okay, so in short, identifying the dangers which are going to affect, or which are going to affect the organization's information system, and then finding the ways, possible ways to reduce or to control those risks. Okay, so we will not be able to 100% eradicate that risk. We can make some alternate ways to reduce that risk. Okay, so that is said to be risk management. Okay, so in IT sectors or in information technology, the risk can come from hackers, or it can come from viruses, it can come from natural disasters, hardware failures of the system, and through the careless employees also the risk can happen, or risk may come. Okay, so here the ultimate aim of our risk management is not to completely removing the risk, but to some acceptable level, or to some extent we can reduce it. Okay, so because completely removal of a risk is not at all possible in information technology or in IT sector. Okay, so to some extent, or to some acceptable level, we can reduce the risk. That is said to be the risk management. So if you take an example, okay, so as an example we can see, if a company is storing the data on its server, okay, and there what type of risk may come is, or what type of risk may get affected is, so the data can be hacked. Okay, that is one possibility, or accidentally, due to some careless employees, the data may get deleted. And also there is another one factor, that due to the power failure also maybe the data may get erased, or the data may get deleted. Okay, right? So these are the three ways how a data can be get corrupted, or the data can be subjected to a risk. Okay, so in this particular example, the risk management means, so we have to think, or the organization has to think, what are the possible risks which can affect the system, and putting the proper security. That is, so if there is a chance for getting the system to be hacked, then what we can do, so we can place some firewalls. Okay, so for avoiding the hacking. And if we have a possibility that, or if you are urging that maybe some employees may delete the data, then what we can do, frequently we can take a backup of the data. Okay, and also we can educate the employees. Okay, so we can educate the employees what to be done and how the data have to be managed. Okay, so by these steps the risk can be managed in an organization. And now we shall move to why the risk is important in an organization. Okay, so earlierly if you see, in IT sector many companies will be there and their ultimate aim is to grow. Okay, so growth is their ultimate aim. Okay, so between the competitors. But nowadays what happens is, so many different technologies have been arising, right? So everyone is using that technology, right? So by not using the technology to get growth, but their main agenda or their main ultimate aim is to protect the data. Okay, so if a company is only looking on its growth and if it is not looking on its security, then what may happen, it may lose its customers trust, it may lose its money, that is the wages which it gets generated, and also it may lose the position in the market. Okay, and if a company is not much bothered about the security, then there is a chance of cyber attack to happen in that particular company. Okay, so as a result what can happen, the reputation of that particular company may get damaged, as well as they may face a huge financial losses. Okay, right? So risk management is much more important in an organization in order to uh, keep its customers trust, in order to keep its position in a market, and in order to keep its reputation, and as well as in order to avoid the financial losses. Now we shall see what are the key assets to be protected by an organization, right? So in an organization, you will be having many different type of assets, inventories, and the employees and so on, right? So in that, what are the main things or the major things need to be protected in an organization? Okay. So the first and foremost thing is the data and the information. Okay, so if a company is there and if they are doing business, definitely what will be happening, customer details will be there, and the financial records will be there, and secrets or trade secrets of them will be there, right? So that should be protected. Okay, so the first and foremost key asset to be protected is the data and the information. The second thing is their devices or the assets or their inventories. Okay, so it can be servers, computers, mobile devices, routers, and so on. Okay, so what are the hardware devices they are using for uh, taking or keeping up the information? Those things has to be secured. And next, the softwares. Okay, so applications whatever they are using, the operating systems whatever they are using, and the most important thing is the databases which they are using for storing their data. And then the networks. Okay, so since in an organization we will not be able to keep a separate machine, or we will not be able to keep machines individually, right? So in order to do a smooth transactions, definitely the system has to be connected in a network. Okay, so the local area network within the organization has to be managed, wide area network which is connected within the campus has to be organized, as well as the internet connections, okay, through which the data are being sent and received, those should also be protected. The next thing is the people, right? So in every company many people should be there. Okay, so those peoples may be the employees, customers, as well as the partners. Okay, so those peoples should also be protected. Okay, so here what can be done is frequent training for the employees can be given, and awareness awareness can be given to the customers, as well as the awareness what are the security measures the company has been taking, those can be informed to the partners. Okay, right? So these are the information assets which has to be protected. Okay, and another among these, another one more thing is there, that is to be the procedures. Okay, so what are the business processes they are going to happening inside the organization, what are the policies they have, and what are the security rules they are following. These things should also be protected. Okay, so here these are the 6 major things which has to be protected in an organization from the risk. Okay, so data and information, hardware, software, networks, people, and the procedures. And so here we can see what are the steps we can take in order to manage the risk. So the first one is identifying risk. Okay, so you have to identify the risk. What type of risk can happen, or what type of risk can affect your organization, that has to be identified. After identification, you need to assess the risk. Okay, right? So what type of you have to assess means you have to prioritize the risk. Okay, so you have to prioritize the risk. After prioritization, so for the ranked risk or for the prioritized risk, so what type of controls can be given? Okay, so what type of controls can be taken in order to restrict the risk to certain level, or in order to avoid the risk, that has to be taken into consideration. After that, the for each and every risk we will have found out some controls, right, that has to be implemented, right? So after implementation, what has to be done is the frequent monitoring as well as frequent reviews has to be done. Okay, so frequent reviews has to be done in the organization. Okay, so these are the steps which has to be taken for managing the risk. Okay, so now we shall see one by one, or the steps one by one in detail. The first and foremost thing is identifying the risk. So what are the possible threats which can harm the information assets of a company has to be identified first. Okay, so it can include hackers stealing the data, then virus or ransom attack, fire or flood destroying the servers, and the mistakes which are being created by the employees. Okay, just like this we can identify, or we can list out the possible risk or possible harmness which can be affected, or through which the information assets can be getting affected. Okay, so those things has to be identified first. The second step is so here for this thing we can have an example, right? So in a hospital, the risk can be the hacker stealing the patient's data, or power cut down or power shutdown for the life support systems. Okay, so these can be a risk in an hospital. Okay, so these things has to be identified first. The next things, the second one is assessing the risk. Okay, so understanding how the each risk is. Okay, so what is the characteristics of each risk, how it is bad. Okay, what bad impact it can be creating, or it can create to the organization. Okay, some risk can be common risk. Okay, so those are not much harmful, but some risk will be extremely damaging, or some they will be having some extreme damage, or they may create some extreme damage to the information systems. Okay, so those should be assessed, or those should be understood. Okay, so in the first step we have identified the risk, and in the second step we are understanding the risk. Okay, so what harm or what bad effect could that particular risk can give to the information assets, that has to be identified. Okay, so example is, if a student record or a student database in an university has been hacked, it can damage the trust and the legal compliance of that particular organization, or that particular university. Okay, that is a high risk impact, or it may create high risk impact. Okay, so here in an university, these things has to be identified, or these type of risk has to be assessed. Okay, and what are the steps we can take, that has to be taken. Okay, the third one is selecting controls or safeguard, that is what type of protection we can give for the prioritized risk. Okay, that has to be taken into consideration. Okay, so these controls or the safeguardness can be of, or we can divide it into three different controls, or in three different categories. Okay, the first case is the technical controls, the second case it is the administrative controls, and the physical controls. So technical controls includes the technicality, or the protection how we can give through technology. Okay, the protections whatever we are giving to the information assets in an organization through technology, that can be said as a technical control. Okay, administrative control means which can be given by the management or which can be implemented within the organization for the employees. Okay, the policies, then the trainings, then the background checks, everything that will be coming under the administrative control. And the third control will be the physical control. Okay, so the physical control or the monitoring of the assets or monitoring of that particular organization. Okay, which can include giving locks to the server rooms, then using CCTV cameras for surveillance, then using fire extinguishers for uh, extinguishers within the campus, then the backup generators if any power shutdown happens. Okay, so these type of controls has to be found out and that has to be implemented. Okay, so what type of protection we need to give and that has to be implemented. Okay, so fourth thing, so here for an example we can take to protect a company from an fire accident or from fires, what we can install, we can use smoke detectors, the sprinklers, as well as the offset data backups. That is, offset data backup means the data backupping system should not be within the organization, it should be in some remote places. Okay, so like this we can take the safeguardness or we can use controls. And the fourth case is implementing the controls. Whatever thing we have decided, that has to be implemented. Okay, so that among the controls which we have found out, the most appropriate one thing has to be implemented or it has to be taken into practice. Okay, so example is installing multi-factor authentication for employees, then training the staffs to click some unwanted emails or some unwanted links, then storing backup in the cloud. Okay, so these can be taken as an examples for implementing the controls. Okay, fifth one is monitoring and review. Okay, so after implementation what has to be done is the monitoring has to be frequently monitored or monitoring has to be happened frequently. Okay, so if at all we are installing the security measures in an organization, we should not sit aside. Okay, so what are the things happening, how good it is working. Okay, so what are the any, if there is any fault, everything has to be monitored and reviewed. Okay, and the risk may change over time. Okay, so if I am giving a safety measures to one of the risk, maybe tomorrow another risk may come. Okay, so regularly the monitoring has to be done. Okay, and then for example we can take some new type of ransomware may appear year by year or from day to day. Okay, so in this case what has to be done, the organization has to update its own antivirus as well, it has to change its backup strategy. Okay, so based upon the threats which it is facing or which the organization is facing. Okay, so based upon the review has to be done, the monitoring has to be done, and the appropriate security or appropriate safeguards should be implemented in an organization. Okay, so these are the steps with respect to an risk management. Okay, so now we can see some scenarios for an online shopping company. Okay, example scenarios. Okay, let's take that there is an e-commerce website said to be shopnow.com. Okay, so here, so one of the risks which it may face is hackers may steal the credit card details. Okay, so here what type of security measure or control we can give is, you can use SSL encryption, then the fraud detection, all those type of technological controls you can implement. Okay, the second type of risk is during some festival sales server may crash. Okay, that can be a second risk. Okay, so here what type of controls you can give, you can use some backup servers as well as you can use some load balancers in the network. Then the third risk, so maybe some employees may get some phishing emails, they may click something. Okay, so for this what type of control we can give is nothing but training can be given to the employees. Okay, and we can the organization can use some email filtering tools. Okay, by using that what they can do, they can restrict the employees from clicking the phishing emails. Okay, so here you can see three type of controls are being implemented. Okay, the first risk one, for this risk one, technological or the technical control is been implemented. The server cache crashes, here what we have done, we have implemented the physical controls, and then the employee clicking on phishing. So here we are giving training. Okay, so this comes under the administrative controls. Okay, so likewise we can categorize the controls and we can implement the controls based upon the availability or based upon the need. So with these type of risk managements, what can be done? The shopnow.com company can reduce its risk as well as, and it can keep the business smoothly. Okay, it can keep running its business smoothly. Okay, so I think so you would have understood the information or the introduction related to this risk management. Happy learning. Thank you.